So all the hardware, all the labor, it's all paid for.
What? Are you sure?
Yeah, absolutely.
I'm cash ready.
No. Hey, this is for you. Yeah, I was like, yeah. So
thank you.
Yeah, but you got the camera right there.
Oh yeah, shout out Matt, shout out Matt. That's crazy.
This Cyberproblems gaming PC might just be one of the worst pre-built systems I've ever tested or repaired. See, this system came into my shop about a month ago. The customer was complaining that their system would just shut off and they thought it was running really warm. Well, after testing it, it was running super hot because CyberPower thought it was a good idea to put a 13900 KF in a glass box with absolutely no room for airflow. There's a ton of fans in here. In fact, I think there's probably like 10 fans inside of this system, but they can't get any fresh air thanks to the limited design where basically there's just glass and some tiny slits available for that air to seep through. Not good at all. And after testing the system, we tried a bunch of different things, including upping the fan curves, as well as we also repasted the CPU, and temperatures just wouldn't come down. The only thing that we could conclude that would actually help was to take off the side and front panel, finally allowing for some fresh air to get inside of this system because of the poor design. Well, today we're going to completely make over this rig and do something quite special. See, the customer who brought this system in didn't have enough money at the time to really actually, do the upgrade beforehand. So I thought when they actually did reach out, we're going to surprise them by doing all the upgrades for completely free. See, I told him the different components I had on hand, and he liked all of them. So I basically said, bring it in, redo the rig, and it'll be like $500–600. Well, we're gonna basically do that all for free, and it's all thanks to you guys for watching. So let's go ahead and jump right into it. Let's talk over the components and our plan for the system. So these are the components we have for the actual rig rebuild. See, manufacturers like CyberPower, iBuyPower, as well as all the other pre-built manufacturers like to typically cheap out in three main areas, and that's really what I'm addressing here today. First up, they like to cheap out on cases because cases are one of the easiest way for them to basically cheap out. This is a very cheap case that they used. Even though it has a lot of tempered glass, if you look at the tooling, this case is probably only about $60 based on what I would expect. It's a really cheap case with almost no airflow and just a ton of glass, and it kind of looks more expensive than it really is. We're going to be switching that over to the Performance 1FT from Antec, which is one of the best performing cases out there on the market when it comes to getting tons of airflow to your components. It comes with three 140mm fans up front and a 120mm fan in the rear, moving tons of airflow through the mesh ventilated panel, as well as we got mesh ventilation up top as well, giving you plenty of air to actually get through this system and keep those components nice and cool. Speaking of cooling, that's where manufacturers also like to cheap out. The AIO that's inside this system is really cheap and really poorly designed. That's why we're switching over to one of the best coolers that you can currently buy, the Liquid Freezer 3360. This is their white ARGB model to go ahead and match the actual system that we're going to be putting together. And then the last area that manufacturers like to cheap out on has to do with power supplies, which is why we're going to be swapping it out. See, this system has a no-name power supply from a manufacturer you've probably never heard of with ketchup and mustard cables, and yeah, that's not going to cut it for this nice rebuild. So we're going to be moving over to this MSI unit, which is not only going to give us 1,000 watts, which is way more than the system actually needs, but it's going to be perfect because the customer is probably going to upgrade their GPU within the next 6 to 10 months. So if that's the case, we'll at least have plenty of power available for them so they don't have to do that at a later time. We can do it all at once. This, along with some cable extensions, is going to make the system look so nice, and I can't wait to get started on it. So let's go ahead and tear this system apart and let's get started. The first step in getting any kind of rig rebuilt is getting it torn apart because we need to get the components out that we actually want, which in the case of this system is going to be the motherboard, CPU, RAM, storage, as well as the GPU. Everything else we're going to leave inside this case. So we'll go ahead and move this glass panel off to the side just because we're not going to need it for the entire build. Then we can go ahead and figure out what's our next plan of action. So really we just need to get everything disconnected. So we can start by disconnecting power from inside the system. And then we can basically pull the GPU out and we can pretty much keep everything on the motherboard. So it should be a pretty simple process. So let's go ahead and start that. All right, so now that we're up close, we can go ahead and pull out power. We can pull out pretty much everything out on this motherboard. We just need to get the power connectors up top. We can remove this fan header for the actual cooler. We're not going to be carrying that over. We got to pull this GPU out, and then we can get the motherboard out. So let's go ahead and unscrew this GPU and pull that out. Now we can go ahead and pull our GPU out. I already got that unscrewed, so we can go ahead and push down on the lever there and pull out I believe this is a 4070. Yeah, so get that out of the rig. Set that off to the side, which is also a really bad pairing if you're considering that this is a 13900 KF. So we'll also go ahead and pull this cooler off. We've got 4 screws for this guy. Good a diagonal pattern so it doesn't pop off, kind of funny. That's usually what I like to do in these circumstances. All right, so with the CPU cooler unscrewed, I think we just got the top corners a little tight. And there we go. We can pull this off. Looks like they actually did a decent job with the thermal paste application, but yeah, or actually I think that was my thermal paste, actually thinking about that. Yeah, that's out of the way. So now all we got to do is get this motherboard unscrewed and pull it right out. So for ATX motherboards, you're going to have usually between 8 and 9 screws, depending if they use a metal post in the center. They're all pretty much in a standard layout. So we'll go ahead and just start at the bottom. This way, we don't put put any kind of stress on the system that's unnecessary. I usually like to kind of go from the bottom to top, just so it's not pulling the actual motherboard down with us. It's kind of just pulling, if the bottom part's not sitting flush, that's going to be perfectly fine. We don't have to worry about that. It's kind of funny. I'm looking at it. I don't think this is a full-size ATX motherboard. Because look, there normally should be 3 screws across the top, middle, and bottom, but all of them are actually just short, which is kind of a weird thing. I didn't even realize with this motherboard, it's actually a little more narrow, meaning it's only mounting at 2 points all the way up. Kind of weird. Definitely, something you see on cheaper boards, but I never realized it with this system when I was looking at it before. Pretty interesting, but we'll continue working. All right, so we got the motherboard fully unscrewed, which means we should be able to pull it right out. Yeah, and there we go. We got our board, which is ready for our new rig. We can also pop out our I/O shield at the same time. There we go. And if you guys were wondering why I told you the power supply was definitely a cheap unit, first up, there's no label here. But 2, look at this CPU power cable. This is the 8-pin that you would expect, but there's a lead off of it to another 4+4 pin for another 8-pin if you wanted to actually connect it. That doesn't make a whole lot of sense to me because I've never seen that on any modern power supply. All of them are typically 2 separate cables for the 2 different 8 pins or 2 4+4 pins that you would typically see for a motherboard CPU power. Very interesting and definitely a weird option that CyberPower chose to use. It really shows how cheap of a power supply that they were actually using. With everything that we need out of the system, now let's go ahead and move forward with getting the motherboard prepped for the new cooler and then put it into the new case. So now to go ahead and prep the actual motherboard, we need to start with just clearing off the old thermal paste because we need to change out the actual bracket for how everything is going to mount. To do that, we're going to use some isopropyl alcohol and we'll go ahead and wipe off that old thermal paste. Get that nice and clean. And we can see that 13900 KF. And at this point, what we need to do is pop off the old back plate that's on this motherboard. So this is the one that was on there. Should just usually pop right off. It may be peeled a little bit. Or you know what? They used a really cheap mount. They used some kind of expandable mount, it looks like, which is not good for your system. And something you usually want to stay away from. This is a really hard bracket to actually get off. Actually have to pop it down, which is kind of pain. So I'm just using a screwdriver to do that. Basically has to pop through and peel the bracket off, pull that off the back. And look, I don't even think they even put the adhesive that they were supposed to keep this from falling off when mounting it. Plus, I absolutely hate the design of this mount. It's kind of a pain to get off because it uses kind of like a self-expanding nut on here or a self-expanding retention mechanism, which kind of makes it a pain to get off when you're done with it. Now, as we have the old mounting bracket off, we need to install this contact frame. See, the Liquid Freezer 3 uses a special contact frame that removes the actual contact plate for your CPU for LGA 1700. But before we do that, because we're going to be reusing this, we don't want it to fall off. I've done that before, and it's kind of a pain to fix. We're going to actually tape this down to make sure it doesn't move. I'm just going to use some masking tape just temporarily. This will just hold it in place. I'm going to put a piece in each direction. And I just need it so it doesn't fall off when I'm working on it. That's really all I care about is just keeping it from falling off and keeping it in place. That will make the process a lot easier. Now what we got to do is we're going to go ahead and lift up this retention mechanism. We're going to leave the CPU where it is, and we're going to remove these 4 screws. These happen to be TR15 screws, so we can just go ahead and remove them slowly. I usually would recommend doing one by one, kind of in a diagonal pattern. The reason for this is that you just don't want to accidentally have them kind of like just fall off. It kind of is a little bit of a pain. So just go ahead and slowly take them off. The reason I put that tape was to hold that mount on the back. Now we're going to do this last one up top. And keeping it from shifting down below, we can now lift right up with this old mount. And just like that, we now can take our contact frame, align it just so perfectly, and take the included screws and screw straight down into that back bracket. These ones happen to be Phillips, so we can go down. We're just going to get a little bit of each one. I don't want that back bracket to shift around. I just want it to be in place. That's the most important thing. So there's 2. Just being very cautious just so it doesn't move around too much. Now what we'll do is we'll go ahead and tighten these down, making sure that we got this nice and perfect. So we got a perfect fit for our cooler. Just like that, we now have a perfect contact frame for our 13900 KF, and basically the cooler will mount just to those 2 points right there. So now let's go ahead and get this installed inside the case and start building out the system. All right, so with the motherboard prepped, let's go ahead and get the actual case ready. So we're gonna pop off these side panels so we can get this out of the way. We're gonna get both sides off. Both of them pop off really easy. They're just little single screw, and then they kind of have a little pop out mechanism, which I do really appreciate. This case also has some panels on the back to hide your cables. So we're gonna undo these. Oh, pops up and out like that. This will expose all the white cables, which is really nice. This one also pops up and out as well. So now we got full access, and we'll set these panels off to the side because we really don't need them right now. With the case all open, let's go ahead and get our motherboard installed and kind of get the pre-wiring done. Something I did like that Antec included in this case is they give you a nice little accessory box so you can sort your screws when you're done and kind of keep everything nice and organized. Kind of cool to have, and I appreciate it. So now that we have the case ready, let's go ahead and pop in our I/O shield, just so that's out of the way. Now we can take our motherboard and we can put it right into place. There is a nice little center standoff, which should hold our board up. Once we get everything aligned, we should be able to feel it. There we go. So we're on that right there. Now we just need to put on the screws. I'm gonna go ahead and grab my screwdriver. And just like that, we now have our motherboard installed. Now we're gonna do something I like to call pre-wiring, which is basically where we take care of all of the cables that we can ahead of time, which means we can put in our extensions, as well as all the front I/O cables and fan connectors that we're gonna need that we can do before we put the cooler in and the GPU. It just makes things a lot faster. To do that, we'll start by feeding through all of our front panel connectors. So we're gonna have things like our front panel headers. So we'll go ahead and put those through right at the bottom. That's where that's gotta go. We put our USB 3.0, USB Type-C. We got audio, which will go all the way into the far right. And then USB, which is also going to be somewhere in the middle typically. And now around front, we can plug in things like our front panel header. This guy only goes one way. We also have USB 2.0 here. Now that we have all the pre-wiring done with the fans, as well as all the front panel connectors, let's get our cable extensions in and out of the way. So we'll start with the 24 pin, which we can just click right into place and pass through right here. And then we'll also go ahead and have our 8-pin. We're gonna have that just sitting right down below. This way we can kind of run it up to the GPU. Now we have our 8-pin and 4-pin for up top. This one's a little more complicated. So for the 8-pin, I determined I was gonna use this cable just because I put an extra cable comb on it for us, just to make it a little easier to figure that out. And then this 4+4 pin will actually just separate, and we'll plug in the 4-pin that we're actually going to use, and we'll run the other cables along the back. So now what we can do is feed both of these through up top, and that should look perfect, just like that. So that has all of our cables now pre-wired. we're now ready to get the power supply as well as our GPU and our cooler installed. So we'll start with our power supply, I think, next. Once we have that in and all connected, we can then put our cooler and our GPU and we'll be done. So for the power supply on this model, it's actually a removable bracket, which is super nice. So all we got to do is pull that off. We'll attach this to the back of the power supply, like so. We can now attach the cables that we're going to need. We actually only need 4 in the case of this system. We can take this power supply, push the cables through first. This is what I usually like to do. And then we can slide it right into place because it's got the nice little mounting bracket. Super easy. So we're going to pull the cables out the side just to make sure that they're out of the way for us, and slide the power supply in and screw it down. Just that easy. All right, so now we're going to go ahead and finish all the wiring. So what we'll do is we'll run our 8-pin CPU cables. We're going to run them through these Velcro ties. So we'll run both of them. And now we just have to run our CPU cables. So we got 2 CPU cables here. So we'll go ahead and run one of them here, and the other one right here. Now, the CPU cables are perfect, exactly how I want them. So we're going to run the PCIe cable. We can plug that in. We have our extension sitting down here, kind of waiting for us. So we'll go ahead and pull that through and pop in our cable. So we'll have that 8-pin powered now. We can push the cable back in. And then our 24-pin, this is the one I was kind of figuring out how I was going to do it. But I'm thinking if I come under, I'm going to have it sit in this connector here. So this is the extension for it. We'll pull this guy through, pop it down, and we're going to have it sit just about right there. I'll Velcro it down so it sits nice and flush. But before we do all the cable management, let's go ahead and get the rest of the components installed just so I know the exact length. Now to actually mount the cooler up top, we're going to first need to pop off this top panel. There's a little release here, so that pops that off. Then we'll go ahead and pull off the dust filter. And then all we got to do is 2 screws, which removes the actual top bracket, making it super easy to install our AIO to it. So we'll go ahead and pull these 2 screws out. And this bracket lifts right off, which we can mount our cooler to now. The radiator now mounts to the bracket. All we got to do is slot this right into place. And there we go. Now we can just screw this in and we'll be good. Now just the 2 screws up here will secure the actual radiator in place. With the radiator now installed, we put some fresh Arctic MX6 thermal paste on the CPU. We're going to go ahead and do the cross method. It's usually my preferred way to go about these larger CPUs, getting plenty of thermal paste on there. It should not be a problem at all for this cooler to keep it nice and cool. And then what we can do is we can take the actual water block and mount that right in place. It's only 2 screws now that we have the bracket ready to go. And basically do the left side and right side, and it should screw down all the way. You can then route your cables, which is what I'm going to do here. I'm going to actually plug in the CPU fan connector because that's going to be the main one I want set for the pump, just for purposes of keeping everything nice and clean, which is the good thing about this cooler is it only uses a single cable for both RGB and 1 cable for the actual fan, which I really appreciate as somebody that has to put this together or possibly work on it down the road. Now with the actual cooler mounted and everything ready to go, we can install the actual pump top, which just actually slots right on top. There we go. Now last thing to do is basically just install our GPU. Which we can slot into place. And then get connected over to our cable extension, which we have wired here. So we're going to make sure this is oriented the proper way. So we'll go ahead and plug that in just like so. Now let's run this cable how we want it. Now that I think looks super clean, and I absolutely love how this all turned out. We just need to go ahead and take care of our cable management, put the rest of the things back together, and we'll go ahead and run some tests. For the cable management, I kind of just did a rough job. I'll probably go back after the video is done, but I just kind of want to get this taken care of. But what we'll do is we're gonna go ahead and put our covers on. So there's number 2, so it just slots in and then should go down into place. There we go. And then we'll grab the second cover. And, I mean, for cable management, that's pretty good. I couldn't do too much about these cables here. Probably could have tucked this up a little more. And these are as bunched as I possibly could keep them without, you know, affecting the actual cables. So that looks pretty good. And now let's go ahead and test it. So with this rig now built and tested, I gotta say, this has to be one of my favorite systems I've ever put together. I tested the system out, and we were able to drop temperatures anywhere between 10 to 15 degrees Celsius. See, the old glass case was basically hitting 100 degrees Celsius within 2 minutes of actually firing it up. Well, this one, after about 10 minutes, only peaked around 89 to 90 degrees Celsius, I think just once, and then cooled down to about 80 to 82 degrees Celsius, which is exactly where you want your system to sit at 100% load. That means the system is going to get better boost clocks and it's going to run at a much safer temperature. This resulted into about a 2.5% increase in performance in Cinebench 2024 during my testing. And overall, it's just going to be better for the components long term, and it should get rid of that crashing that was affecting the old system where it would get too hot and then just shut off because it couldn't thermal throttle enough. That, along with everything else, I think it's going to make my customer absolutely love this system, and I can't wait to surprise him and let him know that he's not paying a single dime for this system. So I'm going to set up some cameras. He should be here at any minute now, and hopefully he likes it.
Go time. But yeah, so this is the rig.
Yo.
It's pretty sweet, right?
No, that's it. That's it.
So we did a couple things. First off, basically, we changed the case, which is the main concern we have with that glass case over there.
Yeah.
Then we had, the cooler, which that was in there, it wasn't that very good. And you got the new power supply, which is a much stronger power supply, gonna be more reliable, as well as gonna give you, probably a better experience overall. And then, I threw in some custom cable extensions. Kind of look a little nice right there.
Yeah, it's fire.
And then, and then the last thing I just want to let you know is I'm actually recording right now because this is all free.
What?
Yeah. I make YouTube videos and I saw your system before, and when you reached out, I was like, I worked with a couple partners of mine and basically put it all together for you. So all the hardware, all the labor, it's all paid for.
What? Are you sure?
Yeah, absolutely.
I'm cash ready.
No. Hey, this is for you. I was like, so
thank you.
Yeah, but you got the camera right there.
Oh yeah, shout out Matt. That's crazy.
Yeah. So, but yeah, I just wanted to.
No way.
But yeah, I got it all running down there. But right now, just wanted to show you.
That's fire.
So hopefully you enjoy it and enjoy the upgrade and the new hardware and should be good. So,
hey, what's your YouTube? I'm gonna subscribe.
It's just Matt's Computer Services.
Yo, that's crazy. No way.
Shut that off. Yeah.
That's my girl was just cussing me out. She's like, "How much did you spend?" I'm like, "Yo, chill."
Let me
What the? Yo.
Yeah, but
no way. That's crazy. You sure? I'm cash. I got the cash ready.
No. It's all good. That's all good.
What the?
Yeah, no. This is what I try to do.
That's crazy.
So.
What?
Yeah.
Yo. No way.
Yeah, I'm just shutting off for you, and then
Yo, thank you.
Of course.
That's crazy. That's crazy.
So let me go ahead and shut that off. Pull it for you. Yeah, it's your system. We'll go ahead and box it up and everything. Okay. But I just wanted to get that thing. So that was a pretty crazy reaction. Honestly, I have no idea how much of it actually got covered on camera. I tried to set up a couple cameras before I got started. Hopefully everything worked out. If not, who cares? Honestly, his reaction was absolutely worth it no matter what. And, basically being able to give away well over $600 worth of hardware and labor to somebody was just something I never could have imagined being able to do before. I've always wanted to do it, just haven't been able to. And I just have to say thank you to each and every one of you guys for watching, because that's what made it all possible. If you guys want to see more videos like this, me giving away hardware or giving away brand new builds, go ahead and let me know in the comments down below what we should do next. And if you enjoyed this video, make sure you give it a like, subscribe for more content like this, and check out this video here of another vlog style video I did a while back. It was an orange themed PC build. It was one of my absolute favorites.